Hello everyone and welcome back to the IA Max channel. I'm Mahi here. In this video I'll talk about the Azure Application Security Groups, what are they and how to create one. So let's dive in. To understand the Application Security Group, we need to have a recap of what the Network Security Group is and what are the limitations of using Network Security Group and how to overcome those by using Application Security Group. So as we talked before, the Network Security Group is a virtual firewall. It's a basic virtual firewall to provide me with some of the network security control over my resources on Microsoft Azure, things like virtual machines and subnets. One of the features of the Network Security Group, or the NSG, is that you could assign it either to the subnet level, like the NSG1, or you could assign it to a network interface card of a virtual machine like the NSG2. The other thing that you could do is that you could use the same NSG as in the NSG2. You could assign it to more than one virtual machine if the network security policies for virtual machine 1 and for virtual machine 3 in the example here are the same. So instead of creating multiple NSGs, one for each network interface card, if they are the same, you could use those more than one time. So what are the limitations of using Network Security Group? If you want to provide a fine-grained control over the traffic that is hitting your resources or your virtual machines on Microsoft Azure, you could use multiple network security groups. So in this case, we've got VM1 controlled by two NSGs. NSG1, which is controlling all the VMs in subnet 1, or both VM1 and VM2, but we wanted to provide more security, and for that we added another network security group for VM1. We wanted to protect VM1 because we've got more sensitive data on VM1, so we added NSG2. The problem with this approach is that although adding a second network security group or a network security group that is associated with only one VM provide us with a very high level of control over what traffic is allowed to our resource, this makes it quite complex and hard to actually troubleshoot traffic when a problem occurs. So for example, if you are troubleshooting why the virtual machine is not able to reach a destination, or why is someone trying to access VM1 is not able to reach it, you might forget, or it might become really hard to know that your virtual machine is actually affected by two NSGs, and then when you jump in on VM2, you have to remember that VM2 is only controlled by one NSG. So as you could see here, it becomes really hard to understand which machine is using one NSG and which one is not. So with the flexibility of, or the more control that you get with multiple NSGs, it comes with the complexity of understanding the traffic. The other limitation here is the flexibility. So to avoid the complexity of having multiple NSG control traffic going to your virtual machines, companies started to adopt the approach of avoiding to assign an NSG to a network interface card for a virtual machine, and would only assign the NSG on the subnet level. This removed the complexity of having multiple NSG, but the problem is that you now have the assumption that all the resources, like in the VM1 and VM2 in the same subnet, are expected to provide the same service and also expected to require the same security policies. So what we lost here is that we lost the flexibility of mixing multiple virtual machines that provide different services in the same subnet, and also we lost the flexibility of providing a fine-grained control, network security control over what traffic is supposed to reach your virtual machines or resources. The other limitation here is the IP addresses. So as you know, Network Security Group use the standard source and destination IP address and source and destination port and then protocol. So for each virtual machine that you add to your subnets, you would need to add another entry to accommodate the new virtual machine. So let's say that we've got an NSG1, which is controlling all traffic in the subnet. If we added another VM, say VM 5, we need to go ahead and go again and update the network security group policy to add the IP address of the new machine. So as you know, this will create an overhead each time you add a new virtual machine, that you need to go and update all the security policies associated with this IP address. Enter the application security group. So to solve the limitations of the network security group, Microsoft has created what is called the application security group. So the best way to think of an application security group is like a label or a group where you combine a bunch of virtual machines or resources based on the service or the application that runs on top of them. So for example, in our case here, we've got virtual machine 1 and 2 providing web app services. So we gave them the ASG, we gave them the label of ASG Web, or we put them in an ASG group called ASG Web. And we've got virtual machine 3, which is in the ASG logic, application security group logic. And then finally, we've got VM4 in an ASG called ASG DB, because it's providing database services to the other machines. The other problem that was solved is that all of the complexity is removed now, because now we have one network security group, NSG1, for the whole subnet. And actually, we could use one network security group for the whole virtual machine. So as you could see here, we've got two subnets, subnet 1 and then subnet 2. Both subnets are controlled by one network security group. So we've got like a single a pane of glass where we could look on all the policies that we've got here in one network security group. The only thing that we need to specify which traffic is going to where is by using the application security group, as we will see in a minute. With the other limitation that was also solved is that instead of us having to specify the IP address of a specific VM or virtual machine for us to apply a network security group on it, we just need to say that we want to apply this rule on an ASG. So this way, even if we add more virtual machines in the future, we don't need to worry about updating our network security groups, as the policies will just the policies referencing the ASG web or the label. So when we add another virtual machine, we just add the ASG or the label to that virtual machine, and it becomes part of this ASG or this group, and all the network security group will apply to it automatically. So now that we have a basic understanding of what an application security group is, let's jump in on Microsoft Azure portal and see and apply this on our scenario today. In our scenario today, we've got one virtual network with two subnets and two virtual machines in each subnet. So in our virtual network here, if we click on the subnets, we could see that we've got two subnets. One subnet is called the management subnet, and then the second subnet is called the web subnet. So web subnets contain the server that providing us with a web app service, and then the management subnet, it contains the management VM that we use to manage the other services in the same VNet or virtual network. So what we want to do here, we want to create one network security group and assign it to both subnet, the management subnet and the web subnet, and then create two application security group. One application security group for the management VM and another application security group for the web VM. So what we want to do here is that we want to create a network security group to allow us to remote desktop to the management VM, and another network security group to allow us to access web services from the web VM using the HTTP and HTTPS protocol. To start, let's first create a network security group by searching in the search bar for network security groups. To create a new network security group, click on the plus create. Pick the resource group and give it a name. And then pick the region that you want to host it. Click review and create, and then finally create. Next, we want to create the application security group. So let's search for the application security groups. Pick the application security group from the search results and then click create to create a new one. So we need to pick the resource group, give it a name. We will call it management VM ASG. Actually, let's call it management ASG. And then review and create, and then create. Next, we will create the second ASG. So let's go back to application security groups and create a new one and pick up the resource group, and let's call it this time the web ASG, web application security group. And then where do we want to host it? It's right the east, and again review and create, and then create. Now we want to associate the application security group for the management with the management VM, and the application security group with the for the web with the web VM. To do so, let's go back to home and then virtual machines. Let's pick the management machine, and then under the setting tab under networking, as you can see here, we've got the application security group. So to add an application security group to a virtual machine, click on the application security group, and then click configure the application security group. This will open up this pane for us to pick which application security group we want to assign to this virtual machine. So this is the management machine, so we will pick the management application security group, and then click save. Our machine is now assigned to the management ASG. Let's go to the web machine, and again under networking, under the application security group, click the configure application security group, and then select the web ASG, and let's save it. We are now ready to provide the network security for our resources on Microsoft Azure. So what we'll do, we will assign the same network security group for both subnets. So to do so, let's go back to home, and then in the network security group, let's go back to our IAMAX network security group, and then under the subnets, under the setting in the subnet tab, click on the associate. So we want to associate it with a subnet. Let's first pick the virtual network, the IAMAX VNet, and then assign it, associate it with the management subnet first, and let's click OK. And then next we want to assign it to the web subnet, and again we choose the IAMAX VNet, and now the web subnet, and then click OK. Our networking security group is now assigned to both subnets, the management subnet and the web subnet. So what we've got here is that now we've got one network security group to control all the traffic in a VNet, no matter what subnet it is. And also we've got a single glass of pane to look at all the policies that are affecting all the VMs in all the subnets in our VNet. To see how this has affected the security on our virtual machines, let's go back to our virtual machines. If we click on the management VM and then under the setting, click on the networking tab, we see that the network security group IAMAX NSG is now controlling traffic on this virtual machine. And if we click on the web, we are using the same network security group again to control traffic on this virtual machine or VM. So now we come to the most important part here. We want to now allow remote desktop protocol to the management virtual machine, and also allow web app services to the web machine as an HTTP and HTTPS. So if we see now, if we try to remote desktop to the management VM, we should fail. And the reason for that is that we don't have any policy to allow RDP or web services toward our VMs in both the subnets. So if we try now to remote desktop to the first machine, As you can see here, now it's giving us an error message saying that it cannot remote desktop to this machine. And if we want to access the HTTP services on this web app, and as you can see here, we are also failing. We cannot reach this page. So let's change that. To do so, let's go back to our network security group, the IAMAX NSG, and for the inbound rule, we'll add two inbound rules, one for the remote desktop and then the other for the web app traffic, the HTTP traffic. To add a new rule in the inbound direction, let's click on the add. And now for the source, we will leave it to, for the source IP, we'll leave it to any because we'll be coming from the internet. For the source port, we'll leave it to any, which is denoted by the star here. For the destination, this time we will pick the application security group. And next, we'll pick which application security group. So we want to allow RDP toward the management ASG. Notice here that we have not put the IP address of the management VM. So we just put the label. So in this case, now we've got only one virtual machine under this ASG group. If we add another virtual machine, to this ASG group, we don't need to modify this policy because this policy is applied for the ASG. For the service, we'll leave it to custom, and then we'll use the port 3389 for the remote desktop, and then TCP allow, and then priority 100, and then allow all RDP, and then add. So as you can see here now, the source is any, and the destination is the management ASG. To add the second rule to allow us to use web app services for the second virtual machine, we'll click on add again. Same source from any, source port is star, destination application security group. And then this time we will pick the web app application security group. And for the traffic, it's going to be HTTP, which is port TCP port 80, and HTTPS TCP port 443. We'll pick TCP and then allow. Priority, we'll leave it to 110, and then allow all web, and then add. So what happened now is that you could see that we are now controlling from all the network security policies for this virtual network from one place, from a centralized place for all the policy. So if you want to add another policy, you come to one NSG and you apply to all resources. So this is the beauty of the NSG. If you want to add another VM, you just add the ASG label for it and it would work. So there is no complexity here. You know the scope of the NSG. You only have one NSG to control all this traffic, and it's easy to scale in the future if you want to add more virtual machines or to remove virtual machines. You don't have to go ahead and change the setting for the current NSG. Finally, let's test our traffic here. So let's go back to the same tab and then refresh. And as you can see here now, we've got the web services working on the first machine. Let's see if we are able to remote desktop to this machine. And as you can see here, we are now able to remote desktop to the second machine. So all our policies are working. I hope you found this video useful. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments below. And as always, stay strong, kia krao. See ya.